The deadline has passed. Woj, is your phone on fire? The man who all day, every 3 minutes, has been updating us with news after news after news, our senior insider, Adrian Wojnarowski. And Woj, the biggest story today is Toronto deciding in the end to keep Kyle Lowry. Can you pull the curtain back on that decision for us?
Yeah, you saw a buildup of deals with Toronto trading Terrence Davis to Sacramento and Matt Thomas to Utah, and obviously the Norman Powell deal to Portland, which I thought was one of the best of the day. And it felt like a buildup to a Kyle Lowry trade. And I know Masai Ujiri was talking with teams right up until that 3 o'clock Eastern deadline. And the Lakers, Philadelphia, Miami, obviously. And, Miami pivoted. They did the Victor Oladipo deal. And I think part of it, too, in talking to people around Masai Ujiri and the Raptors and Kyle Lowry, he was always fine with finishing the season with the Raptors. And I think ultimately Ujiri didn't find a deal that was compelling enough to make the trade. And listen, he'll finish the year with the Raptors. He'll become a free agent. When you look at the direction of the franchise, it seems unlikely that he would be part of their long-term plans. And obviously Lowry at this point in his career could certainly go somewhere else and maybe be in position to win a title. But there's no question Kyle Lowry staying in Toronto was a surprise, and they went down to the wire before deciding that they weren't going to take any of the deals on the table, and he was going to stay in Toronto or stay in Tampa, which is where he'll finish the season. I was going to say, where
he will be able to play more golf for the rest of the season. This day, it never disappoints. There's always the not action is action. You mentioned the Norm Powell deal to Portland. What do you think that does for them in the West?
It gives them, it really gives them another impact perimeter shooter. Powell's had his best season in the NBA, averaged almost 20 points a game with the Raptors this year. I think 43% on three-pointers. And, he'll be a free agent this summer. He'll be able to decline. He'll decline certainly his team option. And, he can certainly be a part now of that, Blazers core. And this is a team that's getting its players back healthy. Obviously, C.J. McCollum came back recently. Jusuf Nurkic will be back soon. And all of a sudden now you've got a Portland team that really held the fort down when they lost, so many of their key players throughout the season. Damian Lillard had carried that team, and now everybody's back, and they get a great boost from Norm Powell, who comes back to the West Coast. He was obviously a man who played his college ball at UCLA.
Real quick before we let you go, Woj, the LaMarcus Aldridge domino, the Andre Drummond domino, the players be expected to get bought out and go to contenders. When do we think those dominoes will fall?
Well, both LaMarcus Aldridge and Andre Drummond are going to get buyouts with their teams, the Spurs, the Cavs. I'm told that the Miami Heat are going to be a front runner for LaMarcus Aldridge. He plans to talk to several teams, and same with Drummond. I think there are a number of teams who'd love to have him. Both LA teams, the Nets, the Knicks are certainly a team with some cap space moving forward that could be intriguing, and Drummond will certainly have his choice of where he wants to play.
All right, so everyone out there, if your team did not make the move you wanted or expected today, it is possible that move could still be coming. Woj, thank you so much. Again, the phone.
Thank you, Rachel.
Make sure it does not explode before the end of the day. We are almost out of time here on the Jumps Trade Deadline Special, but I want to get back to, what it is like to be a player on a day like today. Perk, I know you got a story. Why don't you go first?
Well, Rachel, fortunately, I was only traded twice in my 14-year career. But in Oklahoma City, I knew I was about to get traded like weeks in advance. I was told that by the front office. But in Boston, I had no idea. I actually found out the morning I woke up in my hotel room in Denver, and it was on SportsCenter. And the next thing I know, blockbuster trade. Kendrick Perkins has been traded to Oklahoma City. And I'm like, what? What's going on? And I did not know. I literally had to find out through SportsCenter, and then all of a sudden I looked at my phone and I had like 10 missed calls. So that's how I found out that I got traded. That's the weirdest trade story for us with me.
This is why Perk said earlier on this show, Duncan Robinson, don't sleep because you never know what could happen. Robert, what about you? What's your spiciest trade story?
Well, I've been traded 2.5 times, so
Important.
yeah, half is important. The Sean Elliott trade that fell through came back, but I think for me on the other end, I think when you lose a good friend, I remember driving to the stadium, and all of a sudden I see Otis Thorpe leaving. I'm like, Otis, where you going? And he's like, just leaving. And he didn't even know he got traded because this was before cell phones. This was before all these things you could know. So he had got to the stadium, and we had made a big trade for Clyde Drexler. And I'm like, Otis, where are you going? You my boy. So that's the only trade story I had around trade deadline, because I got traded in the summer one time, and I got traded when I threw the towel in Danny Ainge's face. That was executive.
You threw a towel at Danny Ainge's face?
Yeah, that was an executive move, man. I had to do that to get out of Phoenix, man. I just told you earlier that I hated losing, and we were losing in Phoenix. I had to get to the Lakers.
You
threw a towel at the coach's face?
You got to do
I'm just playing. I'm messing with you. I grew up in Phoenix. I was watching the exact same thing. It was
Producer
hilarious.
Danny says Google it. Again, don't Google Evan Fournier's last name.
Google
if
Fournier. You're welcome.
Anything from our show today, never Google. Richard, what's your best trade story?
Well, my best trade story is not a deadline, but I did have a kid. With cell phones, a kid told me that I got traded at my own basketball camp. So at the last day of the basketball camp, and I've said this before, you're signing autographs for everybody as they're going through the line, and the parents were there to pick up the kids. They bring in stuff, and then this kid comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, I heard you just got traded to Milwaukee," and I was like, "I what?" And then and I looked down, and my phone's ringing. It was actually on the draft day, so it was the draft.
Transaction day.
So it was a transaction day.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.